Hello, welcome to my little movie watching corner. Today I'm going to be watching Because of Winn-Dixie. It is, a really good book, and I think the movie stays relatively true to the book, at least in feeling and themes, morals, but mostly I'm going to be talking about the differences because movies always have to change something. So the biggest difference that I found in the story as a whole is the personality of Opal's father is a lot stricter, he's a lot meaner, he's not very, in my opinion, he's just not the greatest father to her because he disappoints her in the end. He doesn't end up going to the party that she invites him to, that he does go to in the book. He is constantly trying to get rid of Winn-Dixie. He's very hesitant. He's saying like, no, you can't keep the dog, even though he knows the dog needs it, he knows Opal needs it. He still tries to get rid of Winn-Dixie, and he just seems very selfish. He's not thinking about his daughter much, and he's not like putting aside his feelings and being like, my daughter needs to know about her mother, so I'm going to tell her about him or her. He's not parenting very well, in my opinion. I'm not a parent, so I wouldn't know, but he just seems to be quite harsh and not as empathetic towards her as he should be. Majority of the other characters are close enough, but I think they change some of the motivations for them. Like Otis, he does have dark hair. I personally pictured him to be a bit younger, but that's my own head. It doesn't say an age for him. It says that he has black hair slicked back like Elvis, so I was imagining closer to a look like Elvis rather than the guy that they got to play Otis. But they changed his personality to, instead of being like shy and awkward, and that's why he kind of behaves the way he does and talks the way he does, they make him almost like he doesn't like people. He's very wary of them, like almost afraid of them because he doesn't want them to dislike him. Kind of like insecurity, put up a wall of defense and of sarcasm and whatever. He just seems a lot more antisocial, which is more believable that he got his way into jail. But it doesn't fit with a lot of the, shyness of the character of who I thought Otis was. For some reason at the beginning of the movie, I think they have a lot of exposition there that they don't really need. I like the narration. I think that tells a lot. It keeps it close to the book because a lot of what the narration tells us is stuff that is said or like paraphrased from the book, which is really nice. When I did my Tuck Everlasting and Out of My Mind video, I was like, they both have narration, but it's not accomplished as well as it should have been. I think this movie does do a really good job of that. But in the beginning of the movie, they have just moved there. So the preacher is still kind of getting comfortable in his in his church. He's not well respected by the congregation yet. He's not, he's very nervous in front of them. He's not, the proud, the confident preacher that he should be, or that he was in the book. And they're still like unpacking their house, which I guess kind of is okay, but I think it would be almost a little better if it showed that they'd been there for a while and Opal still had no friends. I think it would hit maybe a little harder. Also, Opal plays baseball by herself at the beginning, which baseball is never mentioned in the book. Baseball comes up 3 times. It comes up once when Opal's playing by herself. She was on a baseball team. It wasn't said, but there was a picture of her on a baseball team back in Watley. And that's kind of how she bonds with the Dewberry Boys later through Winn-Dixie. And then Winn-Dixie is also kind of different as a character. He's a lot more troublesome. He causes a lot of trouble and makes it difficult, which brings up a constant question of, is he going to be taken to the pound and people not wanting him around? When the whole point of Winn-Dixie in the book was he is so charming and lovable that people are drawn to him rather than wanting to get rid of him, even if it is just the landlord and her dad. But Winn-Dixie is also the one that takes Opal to places rather than Opal being the one choosing, like, hey, we're going to go to the library, we're going to go to Gertrude's Pets so that you can get a collar and I can, help like you are mine. But Winn-Dixie is the one that brings her to all of these places and thus gets her the friends, rather than her already going to these places, kind of failing to connect with people as much, and then Winn-Dixie propelling her into that friendship and that connection with people. For some reason, I'm fairly certain in Gertrude's Pets, they call Gertrude a parrot. Gertrude is a parrot. I think it's played by a cockatoo, not a parrot, which is just weird. Like, I don't know if I'm wrong, like, I'm not a bird expert, but I'm pretty sure that was a cockatoo. Also, for some reason, Gertrude's Pets, like, it's all farm animals. Maybe it makes sense for, like, this seems to be like a country town where a lot of them have kind of farmland, maybe, based solely on Gloria Dump's house. We don't see anyone else's house other than the trailer park. It's a little weird to me that it's just, like, it's called Gertrude's Pets, and it's pigs and ducks and geese and whatnot. So whenever Opal is talking to Miss Franny about Miss Franny being lonely, about Miss Franny being lonely, Miss Franny is lonely not because all of her friends have since died, because she is an older woman, but because she chose not to get married and chose to be around books instead. I don't really like this implication. I don't like the idea that if you don't get married, you're going to be lonely forever. I think you can find happiness in your friends and in your family. It doesn't have to, like, you don't have to have romance in order to be happy. So I just don't like how they threw that in there for just a real quick second. Like, it was like one line, but it didn't sit right with me. It says that she chose her books, or it implies she chose her books. She says, like, I have my books. I don't need, I chose not to get married because I have my books. Rather than like Litmus, she lost everybody that she had, which was, you know, not, it's hurtful. And it kind of makes it seem like she chose to be lonely. She's much more happy when she's alone rather than having to go through life alone because of not something she did. And then speaking of Litmus, the Dewberry Boys were there as well. The whole Litmus thing was a little bit strange to me because I liked that they started to try and include the Dewberry Boys more, but they were included in strange places and not relevant when they were there. I think if it had shown either them insulting Opal more or them kind of slowly becoming friends with Opal, that would make sense. But just having them like spy on this story and upset that they didn't get candy, that doesn't make that much sense to me. The scene where they're playing baseball with a bunch of boys and Opal is like watching them, that makes more sense to me to include them there rather than them just like spying at the library. Why were they there? Were they following Opal? Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they were there in that scene specifically. And then also after they have the Litmus lozenge, Amanda and Opal, they tell only each other, not Miss Franny, what they feel or they think about when they taste the Litmus lozenge. It should be Amanda talks about Carson because she feels comfortable with Miss Franny, and Miss Franny should already know, whereas Opal doesn't know. So for her to bring it up in front of Opal or to Opal directly doesn't make a lot of sense because Opal's obviously not going to know, not going to be able to comfort her. So to be like, oh, it makes me think of this person that you don't know, goodbye, it's just kind of like, I don't know. It makes a lot more sense for her to tell Miss Franny because Miss Franny knows and probably comforted her in that time because obviously Amanda comes to the library relatively regularly. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in that moment for them to just tell each other. It makes sense for Opal to tell Amanda only, but it doesn't make sense for Amanda to tell only Opal. And some of the things are out of order. A lot of the plot points are out of order. So they go to the pet store first rather than going to the library first. Gloria Dumps comes way, way, way later. So does the thunderstorm and taking Winn-Dixie to church. That comes way later for some reason. Something that should have been early in the movie but wasn't was talking about her mom and the things that she knew about her from her dad. And the main issue with this is that is something that she kind of makes her own personality. Her dad talking about, okay, so Opal kind of sees her mom and what her dad told her about her mom. She takes it and kind of tries to make it her personality because she misses her mom and she doesn't know much about her. And so she's like, oh, well, I can run fast. Maybe I have a green thumb. Maybe I can plant things. And oh, we look alike. And she kind of takes that and really holds on to it and wants to be like her mom. So to have that so late in the story, like whenever she meets Gloria Dump and Gloria Dump asks her, "Who are you? What are you like?" She, if I remember correctly, she starts talking about her mom as well as describing herself. She says, "My mom does this, and my mom was like this." So she kind of is trying to be like her mom and kind of mushing the two of them together. So it's important for her at the beginning of the story to do that whenever she's meeting all of these people, to keep her mom in mind. And this also is like bad, shows bad on the dad, because she asked at the beginning of the movie and he didn't say anything. He just refused to talk about her. And it also shows like he says 9 things instead of 10 things. So he couldn't think of one more good thing to talk about if he didn't want to talk about the alcohol. He could have thought of just one more good thing to tell his daughter, who has been begging for so long to learn about her mom. Wait a minute. I just realized, I think I said in my last video that she's 12. She's 10. Because for her 10 years on this earth, she wants to know 10 things about her mom. In the movie. Yeah. Huh. Oh well, I was wrong. I don't know if I already said this, but bringing Winn-Dixie to church and also learning about him in the thunderstorms happens way later as well, when specifically the thing about church should have happened earlier, because they knew that he didn't like being alone, and yet they still tried to leave him at home rather than take him to church with them, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Dewberry Boys also, they insult her a lot more rather than just, you know, kind of teasing her and being like, "Oh, the witch is gonna eat your dog," and, you know, chasing her around a little bit. They call her like baloney breath and like actually insult her and are actually mean to her rather than just teasing her like they claim, which makes it a lot harder to forgive them, in my opinion. When Opal meets Gloria Dump, she's afraid of her at first, which doesn't happen in the book. She doesn't listen to the Dewberry Boys in the book, and she's kind of like a lot braver, and she cares a lot more about Winn-Dixie's safety than her own, which is shown at the end of the movie when she's like running out into the rain, running into the road to try and find Winn-Dixie. When she sees Gloria Dump, she just freaks out, and I don't think it fits super well with her character. It does fit kind of with her age, but not with the character as shown in the books. And it also just wasn't really relevant at all. I think she could have just, you know, been normal to her. Also, the police keep coming around for some reason and messing with Otis, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think the sheriff that keeps coming around, he was a useless character. He's in literally like 2 scenes, and he's not just mean to Otis, he's also mean to Opal and mean to like the Dewberry Boys when they're playing baseball. Like, he's just not super great. He doesn't seem like to be a very good cop, and he doesn't really affect much when it comes to the plot or anything. It just adds a little, like a teensy tiny bit of tension in one specific area that, like, in a very small part. It just doesn't really make sense to have him there. He's kind of just useless. I think they kind of tried to use him for comic relief, but I didn't find it very funny. Also, Winn-Dixie doesn't smile right. The smile that Winn-Dixie has is like here on the cover. He just goes, which isn't right. He should, when it says that he smiles, it says he pulls his lips back and smiles with all his teeth. So, I don't know if you've ever seen Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2, but Poppy has a cousin named Pedro. I think his name was Pedro. I think he was like not a bulldog, what's the other one? Like a terrier or something like that, that smiled like that. He would just go, like whenever she was brushing his teeth, that's kind of like what it would look like if he was actually smiling like it said he was in the book. And Otis, Otis sings for Opal, which it's beautiful. He plays beautifully, he sings beautifully. I looked him up. He actually is a musician, which makes a lot of sense. But one, he doesn't sing in the book, he just plays guitar. And two, it was kind of awkward. Like, it's kind of weird to just sit there and, like, if somebody else is just kind of playing guitar or singing to themselves, that's one thing. But if they're singing to you, like if you're actively having a conversation with somebody and they're playing guitar, just talking, like that's fine. But if you're actively having a conversation and in the middle, they just start singing their words, that's weird. Like, that's so weird. And I get really bad secondhand embarrassment, so maybe this is just a fault of mine, but I felt so awkward in that moment. It reminded me of, like, that trope of, like, I guess it's not a trope, it's a stereotype, a real stereotype of, like, boys that can play guitar, where if a guy can play guitar, if he asks to play guitar for you, it's really, really awkward. I have never dealt with this situation, but I've heard of it so many times, and it's so funny to me. Because it's just like you're sitting there and you're like, yep, great job, buddy. And then what if they mess up? What if their singing's not that good? Like, if somebody is a musician and they're like, I want to play you my song, it's just so awkward to just sit there and listen. And then getting to the party was kind of strange. Because, first of all, Gloria Dump's land is not at all what I pictured. Like, I thought it was an actual house, like, on a street next to other houses and whatnot. This kind of has it, like, in a secluded area, which makes sense as to why they'd say it's the witch's house, because it's, like, kind of off by itself. But she invited the landlord, which I forget his name, but that does not happen in the book. And he actually comes. There was literally no point. I don't know that he had any lines once he got there. But that, I don't know. Also, she didn't get the idea from Sweetie Pie. Like, the idea did come from the book, but it's also kind of came from Sweetie Pie. But Sweetie Pie Thomas didn't come up with a theme. She didn't bring, like, pictures. Her mom didn't drop her off. Or at least not that I saw. Maybe she did. The preacher wasn't there, so he didn't bless the food. And, you know, when they all went inside, she went off looking for Winn-Dixie. So the preacher wasn't there whenever Gloria Dump was also telling her off, like, you say hello to your guests. The preacher wasn't there either, so he wasn't there whenever she initially went looking for Winn-Dixie. Also, the party was kind of fancy. Like, it had a bunch of, like, fairy lights and stuff. It was, I don't know, it was just a lot fancier than I imagined. Like, they said they didn't have a lot of time. I mean, I guess they did say they had, like, paper mache stuff, so maybe it did actually look like that, but I imagine it to be a lot more like a kid put it on rather than, like, an actually pretty party. But when she goes searching for Winn-Dixie, like, she goes out on her own because her dad wasn't there. Then she goes home, and then her dad finally is like, okay, like, I'll go looking for him, I guess. If you're gonna go alone, I'll go with you. But he, like, doesn't really care about Winn-Dixie, and I'll be honest, like, the argument that they have and the whole thing about her mom, it didn't hit me as hard as when it did when I was reading the book. I feel like it should have been a lot, like, hit. Maybe part of it was because when they were looking, they were searching in the car, so they hadn't been walking all over town drenched. They had gone home, they got red raincoats, they were driving around in the car. But also, I just feel like he was such a bad dad throughout the whole thing. It just didn't hit right. Like, he had a much bigger transformation than Opal did in that moment. And I feel like it should have been Opal's transformation. And I feel like because Opal is the main character and this is first person perspective, like, we are seeing life through her eyes, it would hit more if she was the one that was facing that turning point. And when they get back, Winn-Dixie isn't there. Winn-Dixie shows back up outside the door. And I think it's really, I don't like that ending that they did there where they were like, you know what, we need to go back and we just need to be fine with the fact that we're never going to see Winn-Dixie again. Like, we're gonna have to go back and we're gonna have to have fun at this party, even though someone that we love is out there missing right now. I just don't really like that. I think it should have just been like, all right, we're gonna go back and we're gonna like come back the next day. But when they got there, they started joining in on the singing and the celebration without Winn-Dixie, without knowing he was okay. And I feel like at the very least, if they went back, the preacher should have been kind of fine, but Opal should have been like, man, where's Winn-Dixie? Like, thinking about Winn-Dixie until he came through the door. But they didn't really do that. They had them kind of have a good time and have smiles on their faces. And then they also kind of implied like a bit of a crushed thing going on with Dunlop and Opal at the end whenever he helped her up. First of all, it wasn't just Dunlop that went out and talked to Opal, but it was Dunlop and Stevie. And then whenever Dunlop helped her up, Stevie was looking at them like it was weird, like, oh my gosh, he's touching a girl, that's crazy. Like, I just didn't really like that. I don't think it was necessary. And then he races Stevie back to the house, not Opal. And they had mentioned earlier, like, Opal's really fast. Or at least Opal's mom is really fast. And in the book, Opal said, like, oh, I'm really fast too. I beat this one boy. And then they have the whole race back. And then Amanda's there. Amanda's character was so small. Opal is also, she looks different. She has blonde hair in this. In the book, she has red hair and freckles, just like her mom. In this one, they both have blonde hair and big eyes, were the descriptions that they used. That is all of the differences that I have for you, really. I think it was still a really good movie. I enjoyed it. I know I got this idea because my little cousin really enjoyed it. So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll give it a shot. So I did, and I've had a lot of fun reading this one. It's been since 3rd grade since I read it. I only remembered like one scene from it. And if I remember correctly, our teacher actually read it to us, so I didn't read it. It's just my first time reading it through by myself, and yeah, it was a really, really cute story. I loved it. I'm going to try to brainstorm new ways to make these interesting and more well done, but as you know, like, skill comes with experience, so the more I do it, the better I'll get. And yeah, but I really, really appreciate you watching, sticking it out, sticking this through with me. If you have any suggestions of other books that also have movie and or musical adaptations, let me know. I'm looking for more. Otherwise, I will see you later. Or you will see me later. I will not see you. Bye!